Welcome to Second Half Conversations. I'm your host, Sondra Ziegler. This is a space to discuss all kinds of topics about the second half of life, from complicated legal topics like wealth protection and business succession planning that we break down in a practical way, to long-term care planning and care navigation when you have a loved one on a care journey, to leaning into fully experiencing new seasons of life, of work, and relationships. Our team and guests are here to equip you to take full advantage of where you're at. Because if done right, the second half is the better half. Let's get to it. All right, we are thrilled to have joining us today for Second Half Conversations the founder of our firm, Nathan Ziegler, and my husband. And this is especially fun for me because I've never interviewed my husband before. So I'm going to take the liberty of asking some questions that maybe I don't even know the answer to. So we want to give our listeners a little bit of understanding of who you are, why you started this firm, and why you do this work. But before we get there, I wanted just to ask you to tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, and what you were like as a kid.
Okay. You gave me no clue what you're gonna be asking me, so this
Yes,
is
that makes
totally
for the
off
best
the top of my
conversation.
head.
Yes.
Okay. I was born in Houston, and when I was 7, my parents moved to Lubbock, and so I've grown up in Lubbock, since from the time I was 7, so I guess that was 46 years ago, something like that. So I've been here almost my whole life.
Well, how would people describe you as a kid, or how would you describe you as a kid?
I was fairly introverted, um, kept to myself, pretty shy.
What are some things you like to do? I know you were a
Uh,
Boy Scout.
yes, I was a Boy Scout. I liked the outdoors. I liked to camp. In the summers, my mom would lock the door to the house so we couldn't come in. She wanted us to stay outside, so we spent a lot of time outside.
Uh huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, so it's not just a legend. That's just not just something you see on TikTok where Gen Xers are talking about this was for real. We would get locked out of the house. That happened to me too at the babysitters. Drink out of the water hose. You
yes.
might get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich if you were lucky in the middle of the day, but yeah, outside for hours. Okay, what is something about you that most clients would never guess?
Well, I grew up in a home of fairly modest financial means. We had a family janitorial service. I mowed lawns in high school and college, and cleaned offices.
You entirely put yourself through college and lived on your own at that point. So, anyway,
Yeah. So I'm guessing most clients come into our office and meet me, don't don't have any idea what 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 my growing up looked like.
yes. All right. Yeah, because when I met you, you had a lawn mowing business. It was uh Ziegler Lawn Service, a cut above the rest. Wasn't that your tagline?
It was.
All right. I like it. Okay. Now just kind of moving into your interests, and at what point did you know you wanted to be an attorney? Was this something that you thought about from a fairly young age or no?
About my sophomore year in college, I pretty much had dialed into that. I started out as a business major, and then gravitated toward the arts and sciences, and I got an English degree in undergrad. Learned to write well, and then went to law school after graduating undergrad. All of it at Texas Tech.
So it was a technical writing undergrad degree, which I do think has helped you a lot in your career as an attorney. It gives you a very sharp eye for editing. All right. So then that's how you became an attorney. Tell us about, though, when you decided to focus on estate planning, because you were not always just an estate planning attorney.
when you start out as a brand new attorney, you if you're self-employed, as I was, you you kind of do whatever you can get hired to do. um, and nobody's gonna provide a meal ticket for you if you're
Isn't
not.
that what you call employment law? Whatever you could get employed to do?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't do just everything, but I always sort of gravitated toward transactional work and estate planning. I did a lot of business law. I did we represented several municipalities. I did some municipal law work. Um, I handled a handful of lawsuits. I didn't particularly enjoy the conflict and litigation part of it, but it's nice to have done some of that to be able to help navigate some challenging situations for clients when they arise. And if there's litigation involved, it's nice to have some of that in my background. But I knew I didn't want to do that day in, day out. And so I was part of a small firm initially, and we did business law, we did estate planning, we did municipal law. We handled, a some litigation, and I did that for 6 or 7 years, and then one of our partners moved to Fort Worth, and so the firm split up, and it was then that transition is always tough. But by after doing this for 6 or 7 years, I knew that estate planning and elder law was the direction I wanted to go in. So when I went out on my own at that point, it was a good jumping off place to go ahead and just start focusing exclusively on what I wanted to do. So that was estate planning and elder law, and I had done that all along with a bunch of other stuff. So it wasn't new for me, but at some point, when after you sort of get your professional legs under you, you have the ability to start turning away the types of work that you don't really want to focus on. So I decided at that point to go deep rather than wide. In terms of our my professional chops, I wanted to be really good at what we did and not try to be all things to all people. So for the last probably 18 years, we've done almost exclusively estate planning and elder law work.
So, talk a little bit about the elder law component of this because I've heard you say why I just remember when you went out on your own, a lot of people did not really know what elder law was. I remember we spent a lot of time just educating people as to what that was and how it could help families who have a long term care journey, uh, in the future, or they've gotten a diagnosis, or they have a sudden health incident. So it could be like a chronic debilitating illness, like dementia, Parkinson's, that sort of thing, or it could be a sudden health event like a stroke that suddenly means mom or dad can't live independently anymore. And so they're going to have a care journey. They're likely to need greater and greater care before they pass. And so, wh- how does how does estate planning or the legal field even come into play there? That's what we had to spend a lot of time helping people understand. But can you give it to us in a nutshell?
Yes. When I started in the area of estate planning and elder law, there was nobody in West Texas marketed themselves or held themselves out as doing elder law. That wasn't a known thing. But in the realm of estate planning, there um, estate planning and estate administration, there's a significant portion of the population that if the client or the client's spouse um, has a stroke, for instance, and needs a nursing home, the average amount of savings that a person has for a not independently wealthy typical amount of savings can be used up fairly quickly if you have the need for long term care. And so, if you understand that and accept it for the reality that it is, then if you figure, then helping clients figure out what are ways to potentially structure things so that there's a way to pay for long term care. And for instance, if I needed long term care and I knew that draining, that paying for that long term care out of my pocket was gonna drain everything I had and leave my wife impoverished, I would want to try to figure out a workaround. Um, and uh, I kind of learned that just from personal experience with both, sets of grandparents. I had a set of grandparents on my mom's side when my um, grandmother needed a nursing home. My grandfather, he sought good counsel down in south of Houston in the Pearland area and was able to get my grandmother qualified for Medicaid, which paid for her nursing home care. But it took proactive planning. It doesn't happen, it doesn't happen by default. Or if you go with the default approach without proactively planning, um, you're you're going to end up impoverished. And so, with some good planning, he was able to get my grandmother qualified for Medicaid. That paid for her nursing home, and she was in the nursing home for a number of years. It would have completely drained their modest amount of savings. Because my grandfather did that, he had enough savings left so that when he needed assisted living, he could use his own money to pay for assisted living and be in a nice place, a decent place, not luxurious, but he had enough money to pay for the care he needed to see him out until the Lord took him home. And he didn't have much left when he passed, but he had enough to provide reasonably for his care, and without navigating the rules and getting qualified for Medicaid, my grandfather would have the last several years of his life would have looked a lot different.
So you really saw the need for that type of planning here in West Texas, not only the estate planning, but then the long-term care planning that includes things like Medicaid qualification. If I'm not eligible now, the way my finances are situated, could I be? Are there things I could do under the rules to get eligible? And how does my estate planning need to change? So um, all of that was a desire to do more holistic planning.
Yes,
Um, and
and there
so
wasn't there wasn't anybody in West Texas that was knowledgeable to be able to navigate that type of planning, and so I saw the need for that. And anybody can draw up a will, or a lot of attorneys do, but I wanted to not just draw up cookie cutter type planning. I wanted to do really good planning. We represent clients across the entire spectrum. So we have clients on the one end that have taxable estates with, $80 million, and clients on the other end of the spectrum that don't even own a home, and and uh, and everything in between.
I am so glad you mentioned that because as our, you know, we like to sharpen our saw, like you said, we want to stay on the forefront of estate planning and elder law. And to do that, we keep it intentionally narrow. We go deep instead of wide. Um, but I wanted to have you talk a little bit about how our firm has grown and added to our service offerings on the wealth protection side, with business planning, business asset protection, business succession planning.
After years of doing estate planning for all different levels of care, or all different levels of estate planning, over time you do work for small business owners and maybe they start out with modest means, and over time they develop some real wealth, and and they ask for options to protect it and make sure that it's passed down in a way that makes sense, that protects this, maybe the spouse they leave behind, protects the kids after both spouses are gone, or whoever the beneficiaries are. There's a real need for an asset protection component in estate planning. A lot of people think about estate planning as just who gets my stuff when I'm gone. um, I think about estate planning more holistically. What is the process of? Yeah, yes, we do need to know who gets my stuff when I'm gone, um, but what is the best way to pass those assets down, to minimize the hassle and the time and the expense, and the conflict, and to make sure that when the first spouse dies, that the integrity of the plan stays intact, even if the surviving spouse were to say have remarry or have a new sweetheart, or lose capacity and maybe get convinced to sign something that he or she doesn't really understand. And then once it's time to pass things down to the next generation, or whoever the ultimate beneficiaries are, passing them down in a way that the kids or grandkids are protected if they go through a divorce, if they go through a bankruptcy, if they go through a lawsuit, if they need long term care. Um, so there are a lot more considerations for good holistic estate planning than simply asking who gets my stuff when I'm gone.
Right. Especially when there's a business in the picture, there are more issues, more complicated issues. Is the business going to keep running? Do I have children that are going to be involved and some who aren't going to be involved, and all the estate planning issues that go with that? So it's been exciting to watch y'all develop great plans for our wealth protection clients and small business owners, because West Texas is a very entrepreneurial place. And I love that about it. And so it's great to be able to do that kind of planning. Okay. Um, just a couple more questions. So, what values guide how you run the firm? Like, give us a little glimpse into what's important to you, and what the values that you instill in our staff that are a strong part of the culture of our firm.
It's extremely important that we deliver excellence in what we do. We don't do what I refer to as cookie cutter planning. If I just take your name and paste it in the take the last client's name out, and paste your name in the documents, they're not going to be uniquely suited to your individual circumstance, your family dynamics, and your entire situation. And good estate planning is not going to be cookie cutter planning. So it's going to be personalized planning. It's going to be excellent. We want to uh, always surpass the expectations that the client has, and make sure that um, what we're putting in place is going to work well while they're living, work well when they pass away, work well if they have a period of incapacity, work well if they leave a spouse behind, if they don't leave a spouse behind, work well if they have one or more children that predecease them, if they have one or more children with special needs or grandchildren with special needs. All of those things, there's a whole lot of those things that, you know, uh, just a simple will isn't, probably isn't going to keep in mind and plan well for.
All right, last question. Tell us what you like to do in your free time, which I know you don't have a lot of because you work really hard, and what is your favorite music to listen to these days?
I like to go be in the outdoors. I like to archery hunt. I like to when I get a chance, I like to go and to stand in a mountain stream in southwestern Colorado and fly fish. And I like to be in God's nature. And I like classic country, and I like Texas country, and I like worship music. I like Flatland Calvary, and I like Willie Nelson, and
Of
I
course.
love I love all kinds of worship music.
And you like to have a fiddle in the band.
I do.
All right, Nathan Ziegler, thank you for assenting to this interview, agreeing to give us a little glimpse of what you do every day and why you do it. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
A quick reminder that today's conversation is for educational purposes only. It is not meant to be legal advice, because to give you legal advice, we need to meet with you and know your specific situation. Thanks again for joining us today for this conversation, and remember to make the second half the best half.